Another response to Hyth. Properties. He used the word arbitrary when describing properties. Now, again, I may just be quibbling over language here. I apologize if I am. I don't mean to. But I'm not really sure that properties are arbitrary in the sense of utterly arbitrary. Like, it's not as if we've randomly sort of planted our flag in the ground and said, this is where everything else is going to flow from. I don't think it's completely arbitrary. Just to say that, we need something to build on here. Like an example of something completely arbitrary, I would call, say, the Shahada, La ilaha illa Muhammad Rasulullah, which means there is no God but God and Muhammad is his prophet. That is arbitrary. That's just an artifact that says, here's the truth, and you have to accept this, or else everything that flows from it collapses. Scientific axioms I don't see as quite so arbitrary as that, obviously. But they're not absolute either. So what would you call a point that's sort of halfway between completely arbitrary and absolute? How can you mix the two? How can you sort of say some point that is sort of midway, some sort of golden mean between arbitrary and absolute? Completely absolute and completely arbitrary. I'm always on about perspectivism and Anekantavada, and these philosophies don't say that there is absolutely no reality to anything. It just says that we've got to be careful where we plant our flag, where we sort of say this is where we begin our musings. It's not that we're saying that reality isn't there, or it's not that, perspectivism is saying that reality isn't there. It's just saying that there may be so many different ways to perceive it that there may be no accurate way to perceive it. That doesn't mean that that reality just sort of is whatever we make of it. I don't believe that. And it's not. This is not to imply that every possible view of reality is equally valid either. At least in terms of, say, attempting to do something with it. I wouldn't say that my point of view is any less valid than, say, a schizophrenic's, because, again, the schizophrenic simply has different point of reference. Their sensory information is sort of different from mine, or at least the way that it's processed is different from the way I process things. So their reality is real to them. My reality is real to me. But if we want some sort of commonality between us, I don't know about me and a schizophrenic, but me and somebody else, another person who, sort of wants to deal with things like science or mathematics or something like this. We need something that's common between us. And I'm always saying we have 10 digits, and that's why we use the decimal system, but that is something that is common between us, and it is an artifact, but it's a useful artifact. It's what we base our whole numeric system on. But it doesn't mean that there's any reality to it, but what it means is it is at least a useful thing to start from. Something completely arbitrary, again, would be the Shahada, or any number of things that are completely arbitrary. Yeah, well, arguably, the 3 cardinal or classic rules of logic are arbitrary. But they're not as arbitrary as you might think. It's hard to explain that idea that rejecting absolutes does not automatically entail complete and utter arbitrarity or arbitrariness. Reality is there. It's just the way that we perceive it is different from person to person, or even in our own life from moment to moment, year to year, whatever. What is the correct way to perceive it? How would you actually reconcile, not so much merge, but reconcile those two polarities, arbitrary and absolute? If something is not completely arbitrary, then it isn't arbitrary. If something isn't completely absolute, then it isn't absolute. But reality seems to be somewhere in between these two at some point, because we do kind of agree that there is an underlying reality to all of this. Just picking nits here. I'm just sort of saying that I'm not sure that I agree with arbitrariness. And again, I'm not really sure that you're saying that either.